lovely to see so many people here this morning. So I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Visiting Arts, Creative Scotland and the Africa Caribbean Cultures Plus programme. We're delighted to have you all here. And this year it's slightly different. I want to explain. We have 10 artists here from the Africa Caribbean Pacific programme, and actually the director of the programme from the EU as well is here. And this programme has been a journey of young creative artists or emerging creative artists from Ethiopia, Malawi, Trinidad and Tobago, Solomon Islands, Fiji, Tonga. And they've been on a 3-year programme with us and each other, networking across the world, extending their reach of their art practice and also of their entrepreneurship. And this is the final event where we brought them to Edinburgh to meet you and a lot of other people to extend their contacts and reach. It's been a really valuable programme, and I encourage you to speak to these people afterwards when we have time for more networking. I won't introduce them all now, but you can come up. We will stay here afterwards and you can come up and meet them. The theme of this morning is what are festivals for? There are a lot of emerging festivals in new countries, and there are a lot of established festivals. And we're delighted to have the 2 directors of the most established festivals, at least in the Western world. That's the Edinburgh International Festival and the Holland Festival. And we're going to ask them to say a few words in a moment. We're going to show a very short video of our work to date. And then there'll be a kind of conversation between the delegates here, the 2 speakers, and of course you. So if you put your hand up, I'll come with a mic, and we've got a mic at the back as well. So I'll just show our video to see the kind of work we've been doing. Thank you.
Certainly changed my perspective on arts and culture in Trinidad and Tobago and how we could take it internationally and just bridge that gap between traditional and modern.
I thought the workshop was really informative. It's really inspiring to see what's come out of different parts of the world in terms of art.
This is about connecting the practitioners and the movers and the shakers in the region to those in Europe who can actually look to buy work in the future.
It made me realize there's more I need to do with rebranding, with positioning myself on an international scale.
It's really lovely to do workshops and talk fests because it's much faster to do that than make a project.
It's a key time to meet the key stakeholders in the sector.
This workshop has changed my perspective on the arts culture in a huge way, actually.
So these kind of networking and connections is what I've seen over my 3.5 years at Visiting Arts. And this is what we want to accomplish for Malawi, and this is also the vision that we have for World Cultures Connect.
She fights for her life, she fights for tomorrow, she fights for her life, she fights for tomorrow. Ah yeah, yeah lele mama, ah yeah, lele mama.
Thank you very much. And I should have said as well that the platform that it links all the artists and the rest of the world is World Cultures Connect, and I encourage you to look at that. This is being live streamed on that platform, so it's a very useful platform. So now, to our speakers. First of all, Fergus Linehan, director of the Edinburgh International Festival, well known to you all, I'm sure. He came from the Sydney Festival, where he did a fantastic job of changing a little bit of the culture there, and also from the Dublin Theatre Festival before that. So, Fergus, over to you. Thank you.
Okay. I think I'm going to stand up because you can't see at the back. Look, first of all, just to everyone, welcome to Edinburgh. It's wonderful to have you all here. we must do this event about lunchtime next year, though. Huh? Let's do it. Collectively agree this. So if I'm a little slow, you'll excuse me. Look, I mean, I always make the assumption everyone knows what our festivals are, but I do want to break it down a little bit because obviously different people have come for the first time or have been here times. The Edinburgh International Festival is part of a suite of festivals here in Edinburgh in August, which, I mean, just to mention a few, there's ourselves, the Fringe Festival, the tattoo, the military tattoo at the castle, the book festival and the art festival. And that is part of a larger suite of festivals that takes place in Edinburgh throughout the year. Actually, the pictures here tell the story of our festival quite nicely because these are the productions we've had in this theatre. This is Così fan tutte, which is a co-production with Festival d'Aix-en-Provence, which opens tonight. So this is Scottish Ballet here, who did a piece by Angeline Prelocage and the Canadian choreographer Crystal Pite. And somewhere around the other corner is a picture of Cecilia Bartoli, which was a production of Bellini's Norma with Salzburg Festival. So in their way, they sort of tell the story. A Scottish festival and a French festival coming together with a German orchestra to do, work by an Austrian. So, or a Canadian and a French choreographer working with the Scottish Ballet Company. And so essentially we are kind of international at our core, and the whole foundation of this festival was very much around internationalism and the idea of internationalism. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Again, just a big welcome. I won't preempt too much about what we're going to talk about, but I'm really interested to hear why this group is interested in festivals and international collaboration, because I think there's an interest in this. Was that me? Okay, I shan't do that again. So anyway, I will hand over to Ruth Mackenzie to say a few words. Ruth.
Let me introduce Ruth.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Ruth is the artistic director of the Holland Festival. Before that, she was the director of the Cultural Olympiad for London 2012. Before that, festivals such as Manchester International Festival, Chichester Festival, Vienna Festival, and of course Scottish Opera. She's worked for 5 secretaries of state for culture, so that gives her a fantastic background. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you also, Fergus, for your great welcome. It's great to be here and have the chance to start, as we always do, especially in the middle of the night, reflecting on why you have a festival and what it should be doing. It's particularly good today, actually, in Edinburgh, when not only are all the artists and producers and festival makers in town, but also culture ministers from all over the world. So that's a very interesting kind of clash of culture, if you like, from those that do, that's all of you guys, to those that are meant to empower us to do. So it's a particularly good time, I think, for us to be talking about what we're all here for and how we can all do a better job. And that I think within the boundaries of live streaming. So remember, every indiscreet and honest remark you make is going around the whole world. It's a really good chance for us to try and see how we can do a better job to create the conditions for artists and, of course, for audiences, which is our other great starting point. And maybe I should just say, the Holland Festival was set up the same year as the Edinburgh International Festival. We were both created in 1947, so both these festivals are now pretty old, the same year as Avignon as well. As Fergus suggested, in the spirit after the war, when these cities of Edinburgh and Amsterdam and Avignon were all undergoing great hardships. They had enormous damage to their infrastructure. They'd been suffering terribly for years during the Second World War. They didn't have food, they didn't have schools, hospitals, everything. They had nothing. But they all turned to international performing artists and invested in international performing artists to help them build the future. And I think, that for me is an awesome responsibility that we inherit, that in 1947, a festival was that important to the everyday lives of people in Edinburgh and Amsterdam and Avignon that they were prepared to sacrifice in order to create those festivals. So the Holland Festival happens every year, like the Edinburgh International Festival, we happen in Amsterdam. Like the Edinburgh International Festival, we look for the greatest artists from around the world, and we try to find that same urgency, that same reason why international artists can help us understand the future. So that's my starting point.
So perhaps a second starting point is to open up that conversation a bit to why now and what is it for now? Has it changed?
I think just before we start, is this working? Yep. We were talking earlier just about an article I read recently, just asking 3 questions of a festival. One was what it is, in other words, what is the actual show? Is it any good? Is the performance good? The other is where it is, the actual location, which I think is really critical. But then the third is the why. And we were just saying earlier on, we're very lucky because we had such a strong why. And certainly with Edinburgh, I always say nobody really sat down and said, what we really need is to celebrate art. That was not the foundation of it. What they said was we really need to find a way of celebrating which is not based on nationalism, which is secular, and which will celebrate all that we shared. Because the actual idea of a multi-genre arts festival, we can't find one before 47. So there's things like Salzburg, which was about Wagner, and there was things like the Venice Biennale and Cannes Film Festival. But that idea of saying, no, this is not about one thing. It's not about Scottish work or it's not about opera. It's about the actual spirit of international harmony. And I think that still absolutely informs it. And it's, I think, a credit to Edinburgh and the quality of governance that's completely understood, and those pressures that some would say are put to bear on others about well, you should be doing this or you should be doing that. The bottom line is that it has to be a moment where international kind of harmony is the focus, and that's not always easy. But I think I would say with ourselves, I think, and particularly at the moment, I would say that the founding principles of it are as they were.
I think that's right, and I think that one of the big responsibilities I feel about the festival is that the founding principles, which is you're artist-led, but you're artist-led, that means you're inviting artists but respecting their ideas. So, I would never dream of saying to an artist, please could you make a show, about this topic, and can it be this long and have this number of people? That isn't the job of a festival, I think, like ours. Our job is to say, your work is fantastic to an artist. We're really interested in seeing how we can work with you and how you could come to our festival and we can, showcase your thinking. But of course, that is in the context of our audience, and that is incredibly important because it's also our job to think about the journey that our existing audiences have been on. And we both share audiences of enormous loyalty who behave as, as the chair people of a fan club who are expert about our festivals. Both of us, interestingly, this is our second festival this year. We both started at the same time. And I'm sure you agree, you spend a lot of your time talking to audiences who have been coming to the festival, if not quite since 1947, but certainly for decades, and who really hold the flame in the most brilliant way. And we have to respect that history and the way that our audience are the keepers of that history. But also, of course, we have to find new audiences and reflect the reality today. And in Amsterdam, one of, I think, the most fascinating things for me has been to begin working with local partners who might be third generation Turkish immigrants, or who might be second generation Moroccan immigrants, or who might just have arrived in town from Syria, and to be finding art that is world class, that shows the best of their cultural and contemporary traditions, but that can surprise and amaze the traditional audiences of the Holland Festival, as well as engage a new audience. And that is one of, I think, the most interesting ways for me to begin to renew that urgency that Amsterdam felt in 1947.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always interesting. I don't know with you, Ruth, but just there's also the question of the challenge of the multi-genre, which I find, because once you say you're international and you say you're multi-genre, well, then people say, well, what are you doing about this and this and this? And I think that's always finding that balance of the capacity for a festival to be able to develop, or whether it can really reflect, because you're always there and you realize on the one hand you've managed to sort of subvert everyone's the way they normally attend, so you've got a kind of an openness that no one else has, but then on the other hand you've only got a window of 3 weeks, and I think that's always an interesting challenge. So can you, to what degree can you sort of change the ecosystem, the cultural ecosystem within which you're working, and to what degree are you essentially having to reflect,
You're absolutely right, and I actually find the idea of genres, music, dance, drama, opera, really restrictive at times. And I noticed we now, this is a really technical point, forgive me, but it's fundamental to the daily life of a festival director. We have changed the way we organize our program in the book we have for the program, which used to be in genres, music, theatre, dance. Now it's in days, chronology. So it tells you what's on the first day, then what's on the second day. But again, for our traditional audiences, we still had to have somewhere online. You have to be able to look up everything that is an opera or everything that is a play. I was very pleased to find we had one piece in the 2016 festival that appeared under every single genre. Because the truth is that if you are artist-led, artists don't really think in terms of genre. They just think about what they want to say and the tools that they will use. And also, it has to be said, genre, the idea of dance, drama, music being separate is a very limited Western European cultural tradition, and not a tradition that exists in other parts of the world. I mean, I don't know if any of you guys would like to jump in at that point.
Yeah, for me, I was... I was caught up... I was only because we were busy doing workshops. My name is Tesfaye Weldemedhin from Ethiopia, storyteller. And what I'm trying to say is my plan was just to focus on the storytelling because there's not much time. And I was really caught up by amazing dance performances, amazing comedy shows, and all those things that you see. And you get leaflets and this seems interesting, and you just go there and then, oh, this is great. And then you go to the other one, and all of them, you find some link that relates to what you do. So you can't say, I'm a storyteller, I just need just stories. You need humor in your stories. You need to be musical in your storytelling. You need to be an actor. And this really was the case for me.
I mean, one of the things I'm interested in terms of this group is, people who, in terms of touring and in terms of becoming part of international festivals and that international conversation, why it's so much more important for some countries and less important for others. So, I mean, when you think of it, I mean, places like Quebec or places like Flanders and places where they have, a lot of questions around cultural identity. But there's a business logic, obviously, in relation to representing, perhaps broadening the market for your work. But I think in terms of practice for artists, It's an enormous investment of time and energy and money to go overseas. And for some artists, it's a crucial part of their practice. But we all know some artists just should stay at home and within a very and form something within that. So I'm interested as to, you know, even outside of just the business side of touring and being part of festivals, for the artist, what that experience is and why it's important.
I'll ask Ebonie and Rochelle to respond, because I think it's very pertinent to their work.
Ebonie Fifita from Tonga, which is in the South Pacific. We are the biggest region, I think, the bluest region in the world. And I'd like to come to that, but first just comment on what you were both talking about in terms of genre, and just give a little bit of a perspective from my region and from my experience. It's absolutely true what you're saying about how the divisions, I guess, or fragmentation of our work as artists almost confuses it. In the Pacific, what I understand from the generation of my grandparents, is that the artists were, see that word even, for us, if I say artist back home, people will think, oh, you're a painter. So there isn't even that wide, understanding of that word. But from the generation of my grandparents, those cultural guardians, I think, were singers, no doubt, were dancers, were healers, were the people who nurtured the land. And in everything that encompassed, nurtured the community, navigated the present, understood the past. And there's so much woven into that, that's where our work in the Pacific is trying to rekindle, I guess, in our artists, that same sense of responsibility and connection, and not try to box them into saying, well, are you a choreographer or a writer? Because that has so many limitations to it. And then what were we?
I'm just asking the question in relation to as an artist, say,
why?
Why do you need to have this?
Why international? Why not? No. So my country, tiny, doesn't show up on a normal-sized map. I'm here with colleagues from Fiji and the Solomons. You're lucky if you can see them on a map as well. We know that we exist, but the rest of the world doesn't. And if they do, they have a very generalized idea of our reality. We're not walking around in coconut bras. We are not happy all the time. We don't think that we live in paradise. We want to leave all the time, and we can't. No, but really, that's what my peers express, is just such a longing to not be where they are, to move. And while that's exciting, it's also really, really.
It's a powerful thing, but let me just jump in here to think about those ministers that are sitting in a room somewhere else.
Any from the Pacific?
I don't know. We find out, but even if they're not, from the Pacific, we can think about how to. All right, I have a microphone. How to get a message back to those politicians that have power over your lives, because what you're talking about actually is there's a policy term that here in the UK has become very fashionable, which is about placemaking, and it's about the way in which artists have the voice, have the power to tell the story of the place where they live and work, and to if you like, amplify, to be a way of expressing the concerns of the citizens and of their audiences, of their public back home, And in a way, when Fergus was talking about Quebec, which again is a tiny little place in the middle of nowhere in Canada, which is...
We're streaming.
Okay. Hi, Quebec! I love Quebec. What is interesting about it is that for decades, the political powers in Quebec went, right, we are going to give our artists money and opportunities to tell our stories, exactly to tell about the complexity of our stories. So it isn't just the stereotype of Quebec, or indeed, for those that don't know anything about Quebec, it doesn't exist on the map. And for decades, Quebec gave money to artists, and as a result, there are artists from Quebec who have taken the message of Quebec around the world, who represent Quebec around the world. I mean, the Edinburgh International Festival, has invited artists from Quebec. And I think you have to relate that investment and that policy to the result that those artists then have that opportunity. But, of course, as Fergus was saying, there are some artists where the placemaking process, where what they want to say about their own people, their own lives, their own place, actually is only for their own family and their own people. And I think it's really important, that point, that because of course it's a different sort of oppression, actually, if it's only possible to be an artist and get funding if you are prepared to be an ambassador for your country. And that is something that we, as people who believe in artistic freedom, need to beware of. And it's something that we find, don't we, as festival directors, that we are not here to be, we are here to represent artists, to support artists to be free to say what they want to say. And sometimes if they are, supported by their political powers to be the ambassadors of Quebec, that is a dangerous thing. So it's okay in Quebec because the values of Quebec are for artistic freedom. But it's a complicated opportunity and threat, I think, the political fashion for placemaking.
I know a friend from Malawi.
McArthur Matukusha from Malawi. I am a theatre practitioner, also a festival organizer, a young festival organizer, because my festival is just 1 year old. I want just to contribute what she has said and he has said. Why international or coming this side? It has got also like freedom in terms of financial aspect or economic aspect. Like in most of African countries, arts is not funded, including my country. Like in my country, there is no cultural policy, there is no arts council. The only funding which is there, it has just been introduced 3 months ago. It's known as Malawi Cultural Fund. And that much Malawi Cultural Fund is limited. They are targeting much the theater companies. People like George, my friend who is in music, he has got nowhere to get money. So the moment we travel like this side, we have got a lot of things which we benefit financially, because here arts, I cannot say it's well-funded, but at least there is something which comes into arts. The other thing is sharing experience. Like for us in Malawi, we don't have like an institution where you can go and learn arts. Yes, we have got the Chancellor, others, they have been at the University of Malawi, the Chancellor College. It's the Department of Fine and Performing Arts. But out of 120,000 students who start for all levels, it's only 40 people who are selected to study at that university. And it has got some criteria. If you don't have 6 credits, you cannot go to the university. Like in my case, I've got 5 credits. I didn't manage to have 6 credits, but I cannot go to that university. So when we come here, we also gain knowledge, how we can operate in our countries and impact that knowledge to other countries. Like for my example, I've done a theater. This is my 17th year in theater. I have done a lot than those students who have gone under the University of Malawi. So if I go there and I apply, I want to study this, they say go and write the O-levels, you have 6 credits, which doesn't make sense. I applied for the university, I think one in Netherlands, one in Switzerland. Just using my CV, they said the work you have done, you are qualifying to do masters. But in my country, they are saying you have to do undergraduate. So these are some of the things which, when we travel, it's benefit. And the festivals, they have got a great impact in economic aspects. Because if I invite one of the artists from any country, when he travels to that country, automatically is bringing the forex to the country, and it's contributing to the national GDP whatsoever. For example, others, they have attended the Lake of Stars. Lake of Stars is one of the festivals which is well patronized from all over the world. The government make a lot of money from Lake of Stars, but they don't support arts. So when we're having like this network, it also makes artists to be freely economically independent.
Thank you very much. I was going to suggest that a number of those points, Ruth's point about relating it back to the policymakers is very important. But clearly, travelling to see festivals is an incredible opportunity to reflect on your own practice and your own country's practice. I wonder if I would like to open it up to the floor here as well. But one of the questions Ruth touched on that I'd like to talk a little bit more about, or ask the festival directors to talk about, was you said about the artists coming with an idea. So you said earlier on that what festivals don't do really is show products, but that it's a result of a relationship. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit more about that as a very interesting idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, it can just be an idea. I mean, one of the things I think that people often, one of the mistakes people make is they come with a project and they go, here's the fully formed project, will you bring this to your festival? Whereas in fact, what often happens is you go, well, I liked that performance, or I love the writing in it. And what happens 2 years later, we had Robert Lepage, who was here last year, went along to a show and just loved the design of it and actually picked up the designer to work on a piece in the Met in 4 years' time. So that's what you don't see, and I think that is the conversations that open up. So, I mean, this is just sort of advice from our seat is if you come to these discussions with a specific project and that project doesn't go on, it's very tangential the way those conversations happen, and often the most delicate of conversations are the genesis for a big involvement later on. It's not kind of as linear as people might think.
I think this is always the hardest and most frustrating message in these sort of networking events, because I started off in small-scale touring theatre, and of course all I did was have my packages to try and get festival directors to buy. That was all I did. But Fergus is right. It's not about shopping. You know, it's not that we take a supermarket trolley and we go to the warehouse where you can buy shows for festivals and go up and down and say, well, we have one of those and one of those. That isn't how it works. It is about a conversation and a process, and the development of partnerships and of ideas. And sometimes it can take, years, and sometimes it can happen really quickly. And that is the most frustrating thing to say, because I know that when I was representing a theatre company, I'm happy to talk about anything. I mean, I'd say anything to anybody, but all I really wanted them to do was buy my show. And it was really hard to understand why they wouldn't buy my show, because of course I thought my show was the best show in the world. And it took me a few years to realise that it wasn't actually the best show in the world. But so it is a hard it's a hard message, but the truth is that if you are a curator, and of course all the curators know this, you know, that is a skill. It is, you know, it isn't being a shopper. It's like being a cook. You know, you're trying to put together a banquet. You're looking for lots and lots of different sorts of balances and flavors. It's not about, you know, just is this fish a good fish and a fresh fish. It's about, well, how many fish have I already got in my banquet? So it is a process of dialogue and, you know, and debate to come up with a way to make the best banquet.
I think there's ideas as well. You know, I mean, really struck what you're saying about migration, because, you know, I grew up in Ireland in the 80s and everybody left. Everybody left. It was just, and that sense of thing. And one of the things that's really emerging this August is this question of migration and a really interesting thought, because, of course, artists are coming at it from the different point of view, which is not about how do we deal with this issue, it's why do people leave, and also people have always left. Why do we wander? You know, you know, there's an English person in Holland and an Irish person in Scotland, and you know, what is it that makes us move? Of course, circumstance makes us move sometimes, but it's much more than that. And I think sometimes it's the kernel of an idea like that which becomes the start of the programming process. And I mean, so I think when it comes back to what we were saying at the beginning is what's the why of a festival? And what's the point of it? And then trying to understand that in the conversation.
I'm going to ask Rochelle, there are a lot of festivals in Trinidad. You've got to
Hi everyone, I'm Rochelle Amour. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. I'm a writer and I co-host and co-produce a podcast back home called TNT Unpacked. I have so much catching up to do on this conversation, but the most recent dialogue that you guys are having as festival directors about, you know, curating and buying shows is a dialogue that happens at a level that doesn't even apply to Trinidad and Tobago because of how our festivals are set up. The biggest one that I'm sure everyone knows about is Carnival. TNT Carnival is, you know, I guess after hearing you speak, it is definitely a multi-genre festival in itself. And it is mostly run by the government. So it's not necessarily, we don't necessarily have festival directors. We have a carnival board. So the organization is very, very different. And that makes it a bit more difficult for artists working within that festival to use the platform for various expressions. So, for example, we have our traditional carnival characters, we have modern expressions, we have limbo festivals, we have Carnival King and Queen, which is costume design, and that's huge. There's a prize, it's a competition. So there's prize, there's the steel pan, there's the soca, and that's so all of these things happen at the same time. So it's kind of like an industry more than a festival. And, you know, when you asked about the urgency, why do we need to go abroad? We had an Australian soca DJ who was actually Dutch on the podcast a few months ago. And he said, you know, TNT invented soca music. It's the home of soca music. But there is soca music happening in Germany, that's in German being sung. There's soca music happening all around the world. We don't know about it, we don't play it, we don't invite those artists over, we don't engage. We're not part of that international conversation. So our culture's running away from us in that sense. And the exact same thing happened with the steel pan. And we are having to catch up after it because, you know, we don't go out there, we don't tour, we don't, you know, and it's amazing because a friend of mine who lives in London recently went to the Berlin Carnival, and then we're going to Notting Hill Carnival next week, and there's this carnival and there's that carnival. Where are our traditional, why isn't Damien Whiskey, who's a traditional midnight robber, touring to present? So I said to Mark, my friend at Notting Hill, who's a DJ there as well, I said, why don't you get Damien to perform at that? And he goes, this band had an international traditional character come and perform. You get the musicians who come on their own, they pay their own way, they get paid, so it's a gig more than anything else. You have the carnival band promoters, who again, it's private and they do their own thing and they make a lot of money in these international festivals, but the actual people from the country where this carnival started are not involved. So I think that's where the urgency lies for us. What else did I have to? I wrote everything down because I forget everything all the time. Oh, sorry.
Still pitching. Sorry. I'm aware that time is running away with us, and I would just say, if anybody was at our reception and saw Damien Whiskey as Midnight Robber, it's something that you would never forget. It was fantastic. Please do. Now, I'm going to open it up to the floor for questions. We have other artists here who I hope will also be able to respond, but it's over to you. There's a microphone over there. And if not, well, we can carry on. Yeah, George.
Yeah, I just wanted to find out what room do you think there is on the international festival platform for art from Africa, the Pacific, and Caribbean, which doesn't tell a story of a struggle, and also which is a little bit more cosmopolitan and doesn't involve the traditional wear which no one, when we're back home, wears.
I mean, you know, if it's any consolation, I think there's that exists for everyone. You know, when you say, can we do some ballet from Russia that isn't just tutus, or can we do an Irish play that isn't 5 men in a pub? It's so I mean, I think there is. I mean, this has to be the best platform, because we do not have to just feed into existing expectations in relation to it. Yeah. So I mean, of course I believe the festivals are the very best platform for that.
Yeah, because there's a lot of pressure for artists in Africa to sort of present that kind of.
Given the mic, please. Around the world.
Yeah. There's a lot of pressure for African artists to sort of fit into that category, and they feel as if that's the only way they can export their art.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's also fueled by the fact that those are the only artists that actually mostly come to the international festivals. Yeah. It's no longer art for art's sake. It's more parading sort of cultural differences for the sake of entertainment. It is the same
when a Scottish work goes somewhere else and people go, can we have the kilts and the bagpipes, So it's there's no doubt there's always, I think, that pressure to feed into cultural stereotypes.
The question over there.
Hi, hello, my name is Pierre. I work for Circus Centro, Newcastle and Edinburgh. My question is to Ruth. I'm also from Holland. My question is, there is a general perception that's much easier to work in wealthy countries like Scandinavia, Switzerland, and Holland. What are the challenges you find that perhaps we can find a resemblance when you are from Toga, when you are from Vanuatu, when you are from those countries that are really striving? Is there anything that perhaps is similar?
I have to be honest here and say, you're right that in what I now am obliged to call mainland Europe, there's a level of funding and understanding about the importance of culture and the contribution of culture that means that for many of us who work in those cultural organizations, we are respected, we have a budget, we have a level of resource and understanding that is an enormous privilege. I mean, I think I've got one of the best jobs in the world, and I cannot insult my colleagues by saying that there are significant disadvantages about that. There are not. I mean, it's what I've dreamed of my whole life, to be honest. I was saying to colleagues in the room, one of the feedbacks from my 2016 program is that we should be more risky. We should take more risks. Now, for those of you that have ever worked with me or seen my programs, you'll know that nobody has ever said to me I should take more risks, because I'm generally regarded as being at the extreme edge of risk. I take a lot of risks. And I can't tell you how happy I am to be in a culture where where actually there's a incentive to be riskier, to go further. And what I'm particularly proud of in Amsterdam, and this is my, thanks to the audience of Amsterdam, we broke the box office records for the program this year, which most people in the UK would consider to be an insanely risky program. But the people of Amsterdam love risk. And thanks to decades of adventure from a Holland festival since 1947, I inherit an atmosphere where I have the artistic freedom, the hunger for artistic adventure, and the resource. So what I would say is, everyone else in the world needs to follow this example and come up with the financial base plus the respect for artistic freedom. I can't insult you by saying that there's something bad about having money and freedom. There's nothing bad about money and freedom. Everyone should have it.
Thank you very much. There's one question over here. I am aware of time, so if we could keep it short, thank you.
Okay. My name's Andrew Wood, San Francisco International Arts Festival, and I wanted to pick up on something that Pierre just said and then try and hook it back into another part of the conversation.
Can you speak up? I can't hear.
Sorry, my name's Andrew Wood, San Francisco International Arts Festival, and I want to try and pick up what Pierre just said and try and put it back into another part of the conversation. He talked about what's common throughout the world, and there's one thing that's common to most places, and that's government policy. No matter where you live, there is a government that has a policy, and it includes the arts. Another part of the conversation today was about cultural placemaking, which is a government policy. Another name for cultural placemaking is gentrification or Negro removal. And it is something that the arts are complicit in, and the artists don't always know which side of the fence they're supposed to stand on. But the problem is that artists are always or often used as the first steps in removing a population that exists in one place in order to put in a wealthier population. In the country that I live in, the United States, the cultural placemaking policies are driven by corporations and very large foundations that are created by wealthy persons and corporations. So when you follow the money and see where those intentions are coming from, when the output is that communities are removed because of gentrification or artist placemaking, you have to wonder where the artists stand in that. And are they deliberate carpetbaggers, or are they going to stand up and defend their own communities? So that's just the question I want to put out. Thank you.
Well, I have to say, I think that's quite a cynical view and quite draconian. These things happen. I'm not sure it's necessarily common artist experience, and there are ways of mitigating it. But I'll hand it over to Ruth.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does happen, and I think it is actually both governments at national level and at city level, and of course property developers do use artists as a way to increase the value of a particular part of their country or of their city. There's no doubt about that. But I also think just to push back for a minute, I'll finish in a second, then over to you. Sorry. I also think that it is important to respect the fact that there are artists from all parts of the world who do feel passionate about the need to communicate and share the concerns of the place where they live, and and who are happy to align with their own country. I mean, I lived and worked in Scotland at a time when Scotland got its own parliament, and there was an enormous artistic energy, which I don't believe was cynical or was about making house prices go up, but it was about wanting to express and explore and share what contemporary Scotland was about. And I think that is an important energy for artists, and it is the energy that says, can we have artists that tell the stories that are our real stories, not just bad news stories, but are about the reality of contemporary life and complexities. That's a really important thing for those of us that are working in the arts to support those artists.
I'd like to take two questions. There's a question here, one other question, and then...
No, I just want 2 words. I think that I have an incredible opportunity to be here. My name is Katie Dolidze. I'm from Tbilisi, Georgia, from the Georgian International Festival of Arts, artistic director. Here are people who created our incredible festival in 1997 in the country which was torn by war. We began it in '88. Rob Brookman is here. David Blankins was the incredible man who passed away, unfortunately, Jan Scobie. And these incredible people, and William Bardet Coutts, created this incredible festival for us. I'm here presenting one of the Georgian best theaters, I think, Tumanishvili Film Actors Theatre, who presents Streetcar Named Desire and the Roxy Central, and we will be very happy to invite you all. But what I wanted to say, and what is very much why I came here, because the international community of festivals, the friendship is very important, because our festival, because of my opposition activity in 2009 was closed, because I was in opposition. And God bless, everything is finished. We have a very good government. 2012, we are back to our country. I think so. And the festival is back. And at that time, the support of my international community, friends from the other festivals, were incredible. It was Rob Brookman, it was all others, it was William Bardet Coutts who kept this festival alive. Even it came back after 5 years. And this is very important. Every country, from Africa till the Samoa Islands, we have to be one community, and we have to know our needs. How I came here, and I finish. We did not have money. And our Minister of Culture, which I think will go after elections in October, he will do his festival. He makes very good jazz festival, and this is only his, angle. I think he told us we don't have money. So we cut a little bit budget of the gift festival, and we came here to bring our production, because our existence at the wonderful Edinburgh Festival was more important. Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia.
Thank you. Thank you. Can I just talk about that question of gentrification and money, because I think it's a really important one. I think, and especially because, in terms of, from a position of privilege, in terms of having all of these different stakeholders, but I do think one of the things that one is constantly managing is to put together this, you have to have a broad church of interests, and different people are involved and investing for very different reasons. So, as you say, some people might be about gentrification of a neighborhood, another might be about tourism, another might be about health, and another, so it comes, and increasingly in terms of government policy, it's coming from all of these different areas. And I think in the UK we went through a process of having to justify ourselves through all of these byproducts of what we do, in a sense. But in a sense that comes back to us, and it's stakeholder management and making sure the tail doesn't wag the dog. And so, I mean, of course you have to be careful if you're dealing with big corporations and investment, and you're dealing with governments that aren't interested in the art but they're interested in other outcomes. That management is our job, and any of those stakeholders, I think, can take on an importance that is disproportionate. But that does come back to us. But we still need stakeholders, and we still need sponsors, and we still need donors, and even if some of their motivations are completely different to ours, I think it comes back to us. And that question of stakeholder management through really great governance, I think, is something, it's a little dull, but it's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. I have to stop it now. Please, can you continue the conversation afterwards? I'm terribly sorry. Now I've got a forest of hands up, which I didn't have before. I'd like to wrap this up. Thank everybody. Thank Ruth and Fergus. thank the artists here. I particularly want to thank the team, Mary Helen Young, Sophia Victoria and Cassie. And just to pick up the threads that came through about the importance of artist-led, secular, non-nation focused festivals that started in 1947, I think we're kind of agreeing that they're even more important now. So let's drink to that, as it were. Please go back and enjoy the networking. Thank you very much.